This is On Nutrition, a podcast from Mayo Clinic where we dig into the latest nutrition trends and research to help you understand what's health and what's hype. I'm Tara Schmidt, a registered dietitian with Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. This episode, something a little different. You're about to hear an episode from another podcast called Insatiable. I joined the show's host, Ali Shapiro, to talk about GLP-1s. If you know me, you know this is a topic I get asked about a lot. So it was lovely to get to share my knowledge with Ali, her listeners, and now all of you. We talked about when and if it's the right time to start GLP-1s, food noise, and reclaiming your energy. If you like what you hear, you can hop over to the Insatiable feed to check out more radically honest discussions with Ali about food, truth, psychology, and change. Okay, on with the episode.
Welcome to Insatiable, the podcast where we discuss the intersection of food, psychology, and culture.
There are 10,000 different ways that you can exercise and move your body. There are actually like 15 technically different ways that you can diet that have been proven in research to be healthy and realistic for weight loss. And now we have medications, and there's going to be more of them. And we've had medications for a while, actually. There was just this like gigantic boom with GLP-1s, I think, because they're more successful in terms of weight loss percentages than a lot of medications we had earlier in the 2000s.
I'm your host, Ali Shapiro, an integrated health coach, 32-year and counting cancer survivor, and have radically healed my relationship with food and my body. And for the past 17 years, I've been working with clients individually, in group programs, and in company settings to do the same. Welcome. The information in this podcast should not be considered personal, individual, or medical advice. So you know them by the names Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro. These are the brand names for GLP-1 peptides. And unless you've been on a deserted island, you probably have heard about these. There was a huge mainstream media frenzy about them. I think a couple of years ago, I did a whole podcast episode on Ozempic, Oprah, and our outrage, right? That was more kind of like a cultural look at these. But I wanted to bring on Tara Schmidt, who is one of the lead dietitians at the Mayo Clinic. And she's actually a lead dietitian for the Mayo Clinic diet. She's really into evidence-based principles, helping people develop sustainable and realistic strategies for long-term health. And she knows a lot about these GLP-1s. So I wanted to have someone on who could bring a really nuanced look at them, because I have several clients who I've worked with one-on-one who wanted to use these, but they also did not want to do a quick fix, a fad. They wanted sustainable results. They felt a little conflicted about them. And I also have more and more people coming to my programs, my Truce with Food programs, who are on these. And I wanted to understand more about them because I have helped some clients, and I talk about this in the episode today, really as a thought partner, use these in a more sustainable way than I think they're being talked about in the mainstream media. And I knew Tara could offer some real evidence-based guidance and thoughts around these drugs and how to use them really as not a magic bullet, but a supplement. And she had so many wise words. She's also very empathetic. She's dedicated to eliminating weight bias. So I just wanted to have someone on who could hold all of that. And it did not disappoint, okay? We got into really some of the nitty-gritties around these, how to consider if you do want to use them. I shared some of the client successes I've seen happen with the people that I've guided or, served as a thought partner. And so I think you're really going to have a different perspective around these peptides, drugs, once you listen to today's conversation. So enjoy. And Tara and I got into a little bit about the psychological, it's actually the second half of the episode, about the psychological approaches that we have towards food. And we have the same and different approaches. But if my approach resonated, I want to invite you to a free workshop on Wednesday, September 3rd. It's Catch Yourself Before You Fall Off Track workshop. And if the triggers that I mentioned and you want to learn more about those resonated, that's what we're going to talk about in this workshop. I'm going to take you through a coaching exercise so that you can identify really the roots of your falling off track with food and what is your specific trigger. And having an accurate diagnosis is so important. And so I hope you will join me at that workshop. I'm going to take you through a coaching exercise. There's going to be lots of Q&A coaching, and you're going to learn more about that. So if you've got on your back to school list, the back to school vibes are starting here, that you really want to focus on improving your health habits, your eating habits, this workshop is really for people who have tried all the things and are really ready to explore the emotional reasons that they turn to food, okay? And realize that food is about so much more than calories, macros, and restriction. It's actually a portal to your deeper hungers. So the first step, come to the workshop, check it out. This is also a free sneak preview of my fall program, Why Am I Eating This Now Live, which opens for registration September 3rd through the 10th, and we get started on the 17th. And this is my research-based client-proven framework to help you really get to the roots of falling off track so that you can get the results that you want without more rules, more restriction, just more results. All right, on to today's show. Enjoy. Tara, thank you so much for being here today. I have more and more people coming into my programs who are on GLP-1s. And I'm so happy they are because my work is more about like the emotional roots of food. I mean, I work on blood sugar and stuff, but this is still a hot topic, even though I feel like the mainstream media has kind of moved on, but people are still kind of grappling with how to use these and what are they and all the things. So thank you for coming on today to chat with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't think they're going away, that's for sure, right? So even though they're not necessarily taking over the headlines of social media like they once were, I think they're here to stay. And I think that we'll even see more of them or different versions of them or different ways that we'll be using them, even, from injection to pill form. So they're going to be around for a while, to my knowledge.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that because some of my questions are around like, are there potential healing benefits in certain, we'll get to there, but I just see we'll get there. But let's first for people, because I first want to define what GLP-1s are and how they work. Because I find sometimes people either think they're doing something magical or people don't know how they're working. So they don't know how to really match a treatment plan with what's actually happening. So I kind of tell people like, hey, they help with satiety, but can you explain a lot more what's actually happening with them?
Glucagon-like peptide 1 is what we're talking about, and receptor agonist if we really want to get lengthy. So what this is it's a hormone in the body. We all already have GLP-1 in the body. We all naturally have this hormone. Now, what the drug version is doing is essentially increasing the amount. So it's kind of replicating what we already have in our body. Now, why these started as diabetes medications is because they act to help things like lower the rise in blood sugar after a meal, help the insulin to bring down the blood sugar. And they're acting not only in like the liver and the pancreas in that diabetes family, but they're also acting in the brain and in the stomach, which is really helping with obesity. So what I tell people is the main mechanisms of action are GLP-1s are going to decrease the rate of gastric emptying. So they're going to slow food down from emptying from your stomach into your small intestine. So you're going to feel fuller longer because food's going to stay in there longer, right? We have the stretching mechanism, I always do this with my hands, where when the stomach is stretched, that stretching mechanism sends a hormone signal to the brain and saying like, hey, we're filling up here, which is why you should eat slowly, which is why you should eat mindfully. There's my little pitch for everyone, GLP-1 or not. But now when food is going to stay in the stomach longer because of delayed gastric emptying, you're going to have that signal active longer. That's happening in the stomach. Now, also in the brain, it's acting on our satiety signal. So we're going to stay, again, have less hunger, stay fuller longer. And it's also acting in some parts of the brain that control things like cravings, or what we like to call food noise. Like, oh my God, I just ate. When is my next meal? Like thinking about that snack. I know I'm not really hungry, but I'm like these like constant thoughts of food that I think some people have. And if you don't know what food noise is, I have a feeling you've never had it before. But if I mention it and I kind of describe it to some people, they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, I've got that. Like, that's me.
Yeah. I think there's like two root causes of food noise. One is the lack of satiety and blood sugar control, and then like emotional food detachment.
Environmental, yes.
Yes. But I think what you brought up to people is just really explaining to them how they feel satisfied from food. Because one of the women I was chatting with about questions, she's on them and she's, I think, on like the 5 milligrams. And I don't know what else she's doing, but she's like, it's amazing. I don't feel restricted or deprived on them. And it was like this kind of like interesting thought to me because if, I am not about diet culture at all, but part of the kind of conventional thinking is, oh, we only binge or overeat when we restrict, right? But it's like, there's more nuance to that because this woman is sharing this like, oh, I'm still restricting now, but I don't feel deprived or restricted because I actually feel satiated. So I think that's just like an interesting thing for people to realize. It's not necessarily restriction or deprivation. Like, it's not automatic when you cut back. It's like, are you still balancing your blood sugar? Are you still feeling satisfied from eating slowly, mindful? It kind of turns some of that like conventional, well, all binging is from restriction on its head, I think.
Yeah. And, the thing that we have to be careful of with GLP-1s is people actually under eating or not eating healthfully or in nutrient dense or getting enough protein in, because some people really don't feel hunger or even thirst after these medications. And you can think in terms of weight loss, like, oh, that sounds great. But like, no, I still need you to eat. I still need you to get nutrition in. So it's this really fine balance of like, yeah, you might feel so much more at peace or at ease, like just not having constant hunger, like not really having an appetite, feeling more satisfied. You kind of have more, we would call glucose homeostasis with the GLP-1 because of how they're acting, like they're stimulating insulin secretion and release from the pancreas. We're suppressing glucagon secretion. And that's all good, right? However, not having an appetite or not eating in hello diet culture does not equal good news in all cases. So we got to also make sure that there's this like nutrition, please. Oh,
Well, I'm glad that you bring this up because how do you think about GLP-1s? Because I want to hear how you think about them. And I love that you said, in one interview, you're like, I work at the Mayo Clinic, like we're rule followers.
to a T.
Well, and exactly, like to me, that's part of why the Mayo Clinic is so revered, right? Like you follow the evidence and the research. And yet, and holding the and, we also know that a lot of these clinical studies are done on a specific kind of population that is, I would say, more of an emergency state than sometimes some of the people who are in the middle. It doesn't mean they're not creeping up that way, but how do you think of these GLP-1s? How do you use them in your toolbox?
You just took the word out of my mouth. I literally say these are another tool now that we have in weight management or in obesity management. Again, thinking of that as a clinical diagnosis, which we would in the clinic or the hospital, because I also work with people who are doing it via lifestyle. I work with the Mayo Clinic diet. And for many years of my career, I was specializing in patients who were undergoing bariatric surgery or procedures. So I like to say that to manage excess weight, to improve your health, not to get a new jean size, because who cares about what jean size you wear? Lord knows. We have lifestyle, we have medications, we have procedures, and we have surgery. And there's going to be different risks associated with those, right? Like going under the knife per se, like is risky, like surgery is a risk. There's also a risk to dieting, and we know that there's some pretty bad risks to things like weight cycling. But there's always an appropriate pathway based on your health history, based on how much weight you, quote, need to lose to improve whatever health conditions we're talking about. if you even want to lose weight, if you want to trial a medication, but it's also not a like you pick something and that's the end of the road. We're using some medications with surgery, or I think we're going to see a little dip in surgery, which we have with GLP-1s, but also like the cost of them over the long term compared to the cost of surgery is up for debate. So it's an option, right? Like there are 10,000 different ways that you can exercise and move your body. There are actually like 15 technically different ways that you can diet that have been proven in research to be healthy and realistic for weight loss. And now we have medications, and there's going to be more of them. And we've had medications for a while, actually. There was just this like gigantic boom with GLP-1s, I think, because they're more successful in terms of weight loss percentages than a lot of medications we had earlier in the 2000s.
So what I hear you saying is that it's a tool, like I always tell clients who are interested in it, it is the supplement. Like you still have to do the foundations to sustain it. And the reason that I asked that is because I wanted to ask you about dosing. And that's why I was kind of like, we follow the rules, and coming back to the studies, the type of people they were done on, because I love evidence-based research. And I also think science is a continuing quest for knowledge, right?
It's always changing.
Yes, it's always changing. So you have to hold both. But I'll give you two client examples of, I feel like these trials were done in a way to kind of have the pharmaceutical companies prove that they work, right? So it's like we kind of have to show this shift, which is, of course, you want to see that. But it doesn't seem like they were looking at sustainability to me, unless the solution is to stay on them. So for example, I want to give you these two client examples of people I was working with. One client, she's never been officially diagnosed with PCOS, but she's always had some insulin challenges. So for listeners, that means satiety is really hard when you have insulin blood sugar challenges. And she wanted to get pregnant and was having trouble with pregnancy. And she came to me and she's like, I'm thinking of using these. And I was like, and she was doing everything else, right? Because we had worked together. And it's now kind of now it's in the mainstream. This was 2 years ago, of like microdosing or low dosing. And I don't think there's evidence on that yet, but she was like, I was like, well, in general, it just seems like you would always want the least amount of dosage and maximum results. And she told me, and everyone gave me permission to talk about this. She started with 0.6 and ended up at the full dose, and over a year had lost like 60 pounds and got pregnant. That's why she eventually went off of, she got off them and then got pregnant right away. And so that's an example of someone who's like also considering her metabolic health and preserving muscle and all these things that you would need to do, but didn't use the full dose. And then I had another client who was in her 40s, did not want to get pregnant, but her doctor had said, you should lose weight. And so she came to me, and we had worked together in the past. And she'd gone through a lot of stress with the pandemic, having a baby, perimenopause. And I said, sure. I said, well, keep lifting, let's keep things. And we worked a little bit on the emotional eating for her. But she started at 2.5 milligrams, which is like the standard starting dose for, oh God, I forget which one. I think she was on Zepbound. I think and her insurance covered it. And so then she was starting to lose weight. And then within a month, after the month, you're supposed to go up to 5. And her doctor was like, okay, it's time to go up to 5. And I said to her, but you're still losing at like a pound a week. And we want to preserve your muscle, because she was finding that she was actually gaining strength. She was able to do more push-ups on these lower doses. Because again, we had made sure she was eating right and all this stuff. So fast forward. And then she had some insurance changes. So she was like, what do I do? And I said, and again, I'm not prescribing. I'm just kind of like a thought partner with my clients around this stuff. And I was like, well, why don't you cycle off for a little bit and like get back up to some of the calories to maintain while you figure out your insurance. So she did that for like 3 months, maintain, and then wanted to lose more and went back on 2.5 again and is still losing. And she has lost we've done it over a year. I mean, she's done it, but I've guided her over a year. And she's lost like 50 pounds, has kept it off, and has preserved her muscle, has done it slow and steady. And she also told me that her periods are now more regular. Her hot flashes are gone. So people are kind of going on these and like told you have to stay on them forever. But isn't there another way to make these actually a tool and a supplement instead of the magic bullet?
That's the question, right? So I love that you said that these are a tool or a supplement in addition, right? Because what I've hated is this notion that this is all you have to do. Like you just get to take this and it's magical. And in all honesty, they are kind of magical. Like they work, right? And we want medications to work. Like if we're going to have prescription medications out there for disease states, like let's have them work. Let's cure cancer. Woohoo. However, with this one, I think it is forgotten that in the trials and in like the published evidence, the people in these trials were also given nutrition counseling. They were also given exercise programs. They were given dietitians. They were given a calorie deficit. Like it's important even for these pharmacological companies who are trying to prove the efficacy of them to like also give them all the right things. Now, will they work without all the right things? Honestly, yeah. But if we're talking long term, I have a concern about your muscle mass. I have a concern about body composition. I have concerns about your bones, right? And your metabolism, even. So I do always want them used in conjunction with all of the right things. But when it comes to long term usage, those are some questions we don't yet have answers to, because what we know thus far is that after 1 year after drug cessation, so after stopping the drug, people have typically regained about half to 2/3 of the weight that they had lost. So they are kind of meant to be taken long term because we know long term usage is going to essentially promote long term success, right? And I always give this really silly example. I've said this 1,000 times of like, if you have chronic high blood pressure or chronic high cholesterol and you needed to go on a beta blocker or you needed to go on a statin and you still did all the right things, right? Like you did the diet thing, you did the no smoking thing, you did the exercise thing, but then all of a sudden we took you off your prescription, that would probably go back up, right? Like if you have chronically high blood pressure, you have chronically high blood pressure, even though you're doing the right thing. Maybe we can be on a lower dose. Maybe your statin you can take a few times a week instead of every day. So I'm hoping that whoever your provider is always going to get you on the least amount of medication. But there is a place for medication when we're talking about chronic diseases because they are chronic. Like that's the word. So it's an unknown, right?
I think what I'm struck by is like what works and how we're defining that. Because I think often it's just, I want to see what works in the short term. I mean, we are not winning at weight loss.
We're not going in the right direction, even with these drugs. Like these drugs are going to be, I think, life-changing, life-saving for a lot of people. But like we are not yet curing the obesity epidemic, which it is an epidemic.
You know, when I see my clients having these type of results, I'm like, this could actually, like what they're doing is working not only in the short term, but long term. And it just feels like when you understand metabolic health, you wouldn't be dosing. And again, everyone's different. So you have to match the dose with the patient. But it seems like jacking people up when some people are essentially on a starvation diet. And one of my one client who lost the 50 pounds, her doctor was like, she was like educating her doctor on metabolic health. I was like, well, why don't you suggest this to her? Like we were kind of like chatting about like, and she's like, and the doctor was like upset about how she did not learn this from the pharmaceutical rep. And like, she's like, you're my only patient who's maintaining the weight loss and doing things the right way. And when I think about like what works, like you brought up about, cost. What about like when your body stops responding to these drugs? Like, so I just feel like there needs to be a much broader conversation around like the dosing, and you can see it online. Like microdosing has taken off now. I don't get these ads yet. Maybe after us talking, I will.
They're listening.
They're listening. But there's a couple practitioners who have talked about like, matching the dose with the patient and using the least amount so that you preserve muscle mass. You don't put people on a crash diet. And I like looked in the comments because again, I think research, we often find what works in real people from like their experiences. And I think that's important evidence. And it was amazing to me to see how many people were like low dosing or microdosing and they were getting huge success. And some people, I've never seen these pens, so I don't know. But one woman was like, my insurance will cover the pen, the way, like the pre-filled pen. She does something to take part of it out.
La, la, la. I can't listen.
Oh, you can't hear it?
Okay.
I was like, what is she doing? Like, but I mean, when I read that, I was like, wow, she's going to a Herculean effort to be able to microdose. I don't even know. So I was like, this is really fascinating. These are real people who are trying to figure it out on their own. And there's a lot of proof that like they're losing weight at like a healthy rate, half a pound to a pound. They're preserving muscle. They're like, I'm sleeping better. Carpal tunnel's going away. So I just like, are you guys at all curious about that?
Oh, for sure.
Where do you think like the people listening to Insatiable tend to like have high levels of education on this stuff, looking for more nuance and depth? So I'm just curious.
They're engineering their pens to microdose. Okay, there's a few things going on here. And again, I'm not a physician, so I'm not prescribing these, but here's where like the medical industry is coming from. Here's where your prescribing provider is coming from. The FDA-approved medications are the ones that come in the pens, right? They're only manufactured by a few big guys in the market because those are the ones that were studied and those are the ones that are FDA-approved. We at Mayo Clinic only do FDA-approved things, right? Unless you have an allergy and yada, yada, then we'll get you compounded, whatever. So what's happening out there with, quote, microdosing is you can't microdose with an FDA-approved medication unless you're Jimmy Rigging your pen, which, again, like, I just can't endorse it, you guys, okay? I can't. Because it's not FDA-approved. So at Mayo, we're not microdosing because we're not prescribing compounded medications. You can only microdose from a compounded medication because those are going to come in a vial, which you use your syringe and you decide your dose, right? Like you literally like pull up the medication to however many units you need and then you inject yourself. The people who are doing it with a pen is kind of impressive to me. Please don't do that, but
That way to think outside the box, like, or outside the syringe.
so those are the two companies of like, you're not getting the FDA approved medication if you're microdosing. You're only getting the FDA approved medication if you're on if you're getting it from a company and it's in a pen or a syringe for you, like preloaded. So that's the information out there. Compounding is meant to be going away. I don't know how to say that eloquently. There's a lot of lawsuits out there currently against compounding. So I'm not sure how long that's going to happen, but because there was a shortage at one point in time, which allowed it, that shortage is no longer present. So now big pharma, let's call them, is going after the compounding. Now, I absolutely agree with you that we are not escalating people just to escalate them. That's the progression. Like, so that's like essentially like what the directions say to do. Like after 4 weeks, you do X, and after 8 weeks, you do Y. But I don't know any physicians that are like pushing people to be on the highest dose. If anything, people are asking about microdosing or, like going off long term. And the answer to me has always been, we probably are not going to take you off, but we'll get you on the lowest dose possible so that you can like keep that like therapeutic, helpful dose so that you keep getting the effects and you don't have this 66% weight regain effect.
Yeah. Because when I was asking questions, to give questions to bring to you, one person was like, she's like, I feel so conflicted because she's like a feminist and, like but she's like, but I need to lose weight. And I was like, no, that's fine.
Those two things can be true.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, I'm on 5, but we're debating whether to go to 7.5 milligrams and I'm not having any side effects. And I was like, I don't think the question is like, if you're having side effects, it's like, are you still feeling really great and reaching your goals on the current dose? I said, but I will ask Tara for you.
There's always this balance of, is it working? One, like, are you getting the results that you need to get or the results that are expected? Because if you're not getting results, then like, let's not be on an extra medication. Like, let's change it up or let's, switch it up, do something different. So one, we need to be getting results because otherwise we're putting something in your body that's not working for you and not helpful, clearly. And then 2, there's also side effects. So we might bump someone down, not because they don't need that much, but because they're puking or like they're miserable or they're nauseated all day long. So the good thing about these medications is that there are multiple dosages. of all of them in most cases, especially if it's an injectable. So we can go up, we can go down, we can go off and maybe put you back on. Like there's options, and those are conversations that I want people to feel empowered to have with their prescribing provider of like ask questions. Like you are the patient. Why don't you ask? Like, hey, can I just stay on 5? Like do I have to go to 7.5, or like is it safe for me to go up, after this, or I'm really having symptoms. Is it okay if we drop it down? I don't know any physician who wouldn't want you to ask those questions. Like they're going to follow the rules because that's what they're meant to do. And that's what they're legally obligated to do. And they're going to do what the pharmacology companies told them to do because they're following what's been researched and what they spent years doing with subjects. But you still get to have a say in if it's safe. Why wouldn't they let you do something like that? Especially take less medication. I've had plenty of people come in and be like, hi, I know I have high cholesterol and I would really love to avoid a statin. And the cardiologists I work with, if it's safe, will say, you got 3 months. Go hang out with Tara and come back in 3 months. Or, hey, I'd really love to avoid this. All right, go hang out with Tara, come back in 6 months and we'll see. If it is safe, and I'm going to say that 1,000 times, right? Because we need to keep you safe at the end of the day. We've got to do our job and then all that Hippocratic oath, et cetera. But of course, you get to control a lot of things. And maybe people just need to feel empowered to say like, hey, I got some questions for you. This is what I Googled. But I'd like your clinical opinion. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm glad that you said that, because part of the developmental process that I take people in my Truths with Food model is to realize that there are experts, but there's no like absolute authority of like what is right. And everyone's body, you have like you come into any treatment plan with a unique health history, a unique, place that with your health. And so I want people to know that through this episode that like, okay, these may be the rules, right? But there's also things not being studied that I personally would love to have being studied. And that this is like based on a certain set of clinical trials, and that there doesn't mean there's not flexibility within that. Because I think a lot of times when people have had shame and struggle with weight, right, there's this perfectionism that comes in. It's like, if I do things perfectly, it's going to work. I can't tolerate any risk of going outside the plan. And it's like, but the plan isn't always like totally tailored for you. So I'm glad that you said that, because I want people to work with their prescribers. I'm just finding that some of the prescribers don't even understand how metabolic health works, which is like mind-blowing to me. And it's like, and just for listeners, metabolic health, we've done some past episodes, but that's kind of preserving your muscle mass, getting your heart health in check, like getting insulin under control. And that is the goal to keeping weight off, right? Wouldn't you say that, Tara?
Well, and when you talk about metabolic health, I'm thinking like, of course they know about metabolic health, but I work at a very highly specialized clinic where like we have a women's health department, and we have an endocrinology department, and we have a surgery department, and we have a GI department, and like everyone's like in their little houses. I also know of someone who got a GLP-1 from their podiatrist.
What? Wait, what?
If you can prescribe, right? Which I can't do. So I'm not giving it to you. But when you talk about like people not knowing about metabolic health, that's going to be my opportunity to say, go to someone who does know. Like I would love you to go to a physician who's comfortable and knowledgeable about prescribing these. That's in our department, endocrinology. And there are family physicians and there are internal medicine physicians who are absolutely comfortable and they'll do it. But I also was in an appointment one time asking some questions. My provider's like, you know what, Tara, like, I just think I want to send you over to Women's Health for that question. I was like, thank you for like your honesty and like being a little bit vulnerable, even though you're a brilliant physician at Mayo Clinic, but for saying like, can I send you down the hall? Like, that's just really not my thing. And I said like, oh my gosh, I would love that. Thank you so much. So know that you can be an authority. I love how you were saying like, there are experts out there, but you are one of the experts because it's your body. And there are diet experts and there are exercise experts and there's psychology and there's metabolic or endocrinologists. there's lots of wonderful people out there with all different kinds of specialties, but it would be important to me in this conversation that we're having would be to go have that conversation with someone who is an expert in these medications, or at least in obesity management, in endocrinology. I don't really care. But I'm hoping you have a physician who, if they don't know about metabolic health, they're not prescribing, in all honesty, right? Like, I hope they're like, hey, can you go down the hall and talk to my colleague? Because that's, I think, what the responsible thing would be. But like, I'm not anyone's mom other than my small children. So that's just my little soapbox there.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm grateful that you said that, because I want people to be in good hands, right? Like, if you're going to undertake something, you need the right support. And I just, and again, things are changing, but we're in this very specific moment in time where a lot of things are broken, and doctors are just starting to learn nutrition in medical school, right? Like, and again, this isn't like Western medicine also was designed at a time where it was like, if you're in a car crash, right? It wasn't designed with chronic disease in mind. So it's nobody's fault or anything. It's just,
It's slow moving.
yes, exactly. So one more question on kind of like the physical aspects of this. Do you think that there is some sort of healing happening with insulin resistance or anything? And because when I read some of these comments, it's amazing, people saying hamstrings getting better. My client, her carpal tunnel got better. And I'm like, okay, is that inflammation from the weight loss? Maybe a little bit of both. But even I have a family member who's struggling with Parkinson's, and I found clinical data that liraglutide, which was kind of like the first version of these, has been in clinical trials shown to help certain Parkinson patients. And I was like, I'm just curious about, do you think there's some regenerative medicine happening within these?
I think there's a lot going on. And you kind of said this, like, will we ever know if it's like, I don't know if chicken or the egg is the right model to use here, but like, is it the weight loss? Is it the like beta cell function that's improving things? Is it lipids, right? So we're going to continue to see, which is great, more and more research about other uses for these drugs. So like, again, started out as diabetes, and that was great. Went into obesity, that's great too. Now we're looking at like the cardioprotective effects of it. And is it going to be approved, right, for heart health? So there's this like giant list of, okay, if we have lower energy intake, we have lower appetite, we'll have a lower weight, increased insulin, increased beta cell function, decreased glucagon, and like we can like talk about, again, that's all the stuff we talked about before. But we're also finding they improve lipid disorders, like fat in the blood pressure. Fatty liver is a huge problem in the United States, even with kids, which is really kind of scary and sad. So these are improving fatty liver, reduced risk of heart disease, reduced risk of kidney disease, delays the progression of diabetes-related neuropathy, renal benefits. I don't know if I said the kidney already. Cardioprotective, increased lifespan, all-cause mortality, studying it for Alzheimer's, alcohol use disorders in terms of like the addiction. So I don't have the answers. I don't think I have the answer to your question, but like there are things happening that are positive, hugely positive, obviously. And we also know in the more negative realm that like having excess weight negatively impacts all of those things. So I think maybe both things can be true, right? Like when we have improved function of all these things, like that's good, clearly. And when we reduce our excess weight and, okay, now I have a third thing that I thought of. And are we reducing our intake of ultra processed foods? Okay, that's it's like honestly a whole nother bucket, right? Not only are we losing weight, not only do we have like improved organ function, but because we have lower appetite, because we have less cravings, now are we eating less? Can I say crap? That's not a bad thing either. So maybe it's all the above. We need like a chicken and an egg and something else.
In my Truths with Food model is rooted in developmental psychology, and what I'm trying to always get clients to realize is that what you're trying to do is move them up. It's called complexity fitness, being able to hold nothing is one thing.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Right. So what you're saying is like, okay, maybe it's the weight loss, maybe it's the inflammation, maybe it's the beta cell. But the cool thing is like when you address the roots of something, you don't have to address each thing individually. Like all the systems get better, right? So
I wish everyone knew that about nutrition because I'm asked so many questions, mostly from the media, about like specific foods, specific ingredients. And I'm like, it's more complex than that. Like, we don't just like live in a room and like eat bananas. Like, okay, are bananas good or bad? Like, well, you locked me in a room and all you gave me was bananas. Like, there's a problem there. Like, that's one, not how anyone lives.
is there anyone going to let me out? I'm claustrophobic.
Like, bananas are great. So let's not study that bananas are bad because you locked me in a room and all you gave me was bananas. So I love that you mentioned complexity because food is complex. Like, eating is complex.
Oh my God. I tell my clients, I'm like, those continuous glucose monitors, the banana example, like, did you eat the banana in a rush because you were late to drop off your kid and you have a big work? Like, that stress is going to.
Did you only eat the banana or was there some peanut butter and toast with it?
Well, this is not what clients come to me for, but they leave valuing discernment. And I'm like, you need to understand the media is targeting a developmental level of good or bad.
Of headlines like bananas are bad. Like,
but super simple.
Butter is back. Like literally 3 words, right? Like, don't drink coffee. Like, wait.
The answer is always it depends, but that is not going to sell magazines.
People hate when I say that. Yes. Oh my gosh.
I know. Well, fortunately, like you get tired of that eventually and you're like, okay, I have to add some more complexity. So speaking of complexity, so a lot of my clients kind of come to me when I don't know if they can articulate this yet, but they know that what they were doing is no longer working. And so I basically help them see that health, weight, food is more than food and exercise, that it's also actually in my work about attachment and belonging. And we turn to that when we don't feel like we have that because nature, when we turn to food, it stimulates attachment chemicals, but it doesn't give us the deeper caregiving. Yes, dopamine, oxytocin. I mean, dopamine is sometimes, right, like super, super stimulating, whereas oxytocin is more like your warm fall soup instead of your ultra processed foods. Yeah. That's a whole other podcast. I'll have you back on about our addiction to intensity. But when we think of food noise, so we talked about the first one being about around satiety, okay? And then I see the second is kind of the emotional reasons people turn to food. And I heard you say in an interview that, and I love this, that you discern between hunger and appetite. So can you talk a little bit about that?
And I don't know if I made this up or where I'm supposed to be giving credit, but personally, this is just how I kind of define things when I'm talking to my patients and my members, is that I think that there is hunger that comes from your stomach, where like your stomach is growling. You could eat a freaking horse. You have not eaten in multiple hours, like physiological hunger, like your body is like, hello, like we're hungry here. Like it's giving you all the right signals. Hunger is a good thing. Loss of hunger, especially if we're talking about like end of life, like is not honestly a good sign. Then there's appetite, which I think is more coming from the brain of like, I feel like getting myself a latte at Target today, or like, I feel like having a glass of wine. Like my stomach did not tell me that I wanted a latte. My brain told me that I should treat myself because I'm at Target without my kids. And that sounds really delicious. And I think I've got a gift card in my purse somewhere. And so I differentiate it between like your stomach and your brain. And it's more complex. Like these are not just like 2 little like signals sitting here. I think a lot more things can play into appetite in like what you're seeking. Are you seeking comfort? Are you seeking a blood sugar rise? Are you seeking pleasure? Are you seeking a reward? And like going down like that like path versus like, oh my gosh, I've been, like working for the last 5 hours and haven't had any lunch. My stomach is like tiny and screaming at me.
Well, and I love that distinction for people because even your language, because I'm super into language and the story it tells. Like I feel like, and my work again, I kind of told you briefly, but it's really, and this is kind of building. I mean, my work is research based. The Mayo Clinic would like it, but also it builds on Dr. Deborah McNamara's childhood development work about how food, basically nature designed food belonging to be served with the side of food, right? And so when you talk about comfort, right, I think sometimes we think of that in a shaming way. Like, I'm looking for comfort.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying you were, but I think people in the media, it's like, stop turning to food for comfort or pleasure or a reward. But she talks about food really being this place of rest, right? Where we have a caretaker who there is comfort in their presence. There is a reward of being able to kind of lay down your troubles, right? In a way of getting support. And so that's kind of the angle that I take of like, why does this make sense that you need comfort? Why does this make sense? But how do you approach the psychology of food, the more appetite, I feel like this rather than I'm actually hungry?
Well, and do you go all the way while you were talking? I was like having these thoughts about breastfeeding, because breastfeeding can be absolute nutrition. Like your baby screams their head off and they're like, okay, are you hungry? Are you wet? Like what's going on here? But I think that babies can also nurse for comfort. Like, have you ever had a baby like it like has like a few little sucks and then it falls asleep? You're like, oh, you weren't hungry. Like you just wanted like to smell your mom and to like get comfort. Like nursing can be comfort too. So it's really complex. And sometimes I'd even talk to my patients about how we lose our sense of listening to our physical signals of fullness pretty soon, like, I don't know, into childhood. Because babies, when they are breastfeeding or bottle feeding, that doesn't matter. When they're full, like they'll turn their head away. Like they'll be like, get that thing away from me. This is not the comfort scenario. This is the hunger scenario, right? Of like, I have an unlimited supply of food in this bottle or in this breast, but like my brain told me, because my stomach filled up with milk and then like stretched and then this hormone signal went to my brain. And now I'm like, no thanks, mom or caregiver. Like, I don't want any more of that. Like, I need to burp and go to bed now. We lose listening to those signals very early on, because one, we have more mature brains and we're like functioning humans eventually. But we have environmental cues, right? Of like, ooh, that looks good, right? Like I saw the Starbucks. Or we have emotional cues of like, oh, I'm really feeling like this. I'm going to use food to provide me with that. So I do a little bit, especially because I'm in groups a lot, of the basic like, okay, what was your trigger? What was the response to the trigger? And what was the reward at the end of the day? And like helping people find how they're rewarding themselves. And just the question of not, can you do something else always, but can you adapt your response? So like, not that you're not going to have a cookie because you want a cookie, and guess what? Cookies are not like evil things or quote bad. I hate when people call foods good or bad. Like they don't have values associated with them. Like it's just a cookie, Cheryl. So I would do more so like, okay, I understand you're seeking this reward. How can we improve your response? Like maybe it's one or two. Maybe it's saved for Fridays. Maybe it is no cookies, leave the house. Like you actually just needed some sunlight. You needed to go for a walk. But I look more at the, yes, reward are you seeking? And how can we adapt either your trigger in the first place or your response to it?
Yeah. Well, I love that you brought up breastfeeding, and because I think sometimes when there's advice around, like when I read in the magazines, right, it's like, oh, it's for comfort or pleasure. But what you're describing is that we know but don't remember that food and safety are intertwined, right? Because, and this is what actually Dr. Deborah McNamara, I had her on my podcast. Well, we'll link it in the show notes, episode 280. But she talked about what Maslow got wrong. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. And she said Maslow did not have the benefit of neuroscience. So we now know that belonging or that caretaking is actually more important to the brain, because that's how you secure all the other basic needs, right? So like you talked about, sometimes the baby's just like needs a little bit of milk for comfort, but it's the comfort of knowing someone's there and the food happens to be there as well. So we know but don't remember. So when we're going for that comfort, it's this like automatic pilot, this drive that has been with us and that nature actually designed it for that way. And then the other thing she talks about is that Maslow actually didn't have strong attachment with his parents. So there's no way that he would know as a theorist.
Oh, wow.
Right? And that caretaking is so important. And I would get into how like even the pyramid, and that's kind of Western mentality of linearity.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, yeah. But what you were even talking about the latte at Target, right? It's interesting that the foods people tend to go to are dairy and sugar, which are the sweetness of breast milk or formula, right? And these more mothering foods. I mean, even if we put on a different framework of traditional Chinese medicine, sugar, wine, dairy all has very yin or mothering qualities, right?
I'm literally like drinking like my version of breast milk at Target.
Yeah. The adult version that's acceptable. But like it makes sense, right? Like, and so my clients start to realize, like, when they're turning to this stuff, it's like, oh, and again, this, I hate to use the word mothering because this is not about mothers or parent, it's not that, but it is that energy of here is a place to rest. Here is a place to like, right, because people talk about being stressed, they stress eat or they want to comfort. And it's like, I think what they're most deeply looking for is that sense of exhale, that sense of I can we're laying down my troubles. But but what people tend to do is isolate when they're stressed, which further then makes them want to turn to food because food is the closest thing to the attachment. Because again, back to the attachment chemicals. And Dr. Deborah McNamara talks about like there's nothing as addictive as something that almost works. And so it's like, oh, food almost gives me that sense that I'm not all alone in this.
And it's legal and it's super accessible. And I do think it gives you dopamine, like, and all the good, happy little things. Like, no one's eating carrots at this point in time. Like, if you stress eat carrots, like, you go, girl. Like, good for you. I don't need to see you in my office. But that's not what's happening. Like, we're seeking the things. And I'll even have patients experiment, and I'm sure you do too with your clients. Like, okay, is this like a time transition habit? Like, I come home from work and I go right to the kitchen to like have my glass of wine and cheese and crackers. Okay, I get that you absolutely deserve a time transition. But when you get home from work, I want you to like pour yourself a cup of your very, very favorite tea and sit on the porch. And I think you're going to hopefully get the same benefit. And if you don't, then my experiment failed and we're going to go back to the drawing board and think of something you do like. Because you're like, ew, Tara, I hate teas and I hate mosquitoes. I go, okay, then you give me something else. But we like continually experiment until you get that same feeling, if that's appropriate. And if we just need to be like, okay, less wine or let's eliminate alcohol. Okay, like cheese and crackers, we're going to add some apples and some nuts to that charcuterie board and just cut down on the other things. It's all possible. It doesn't have to be this like eating for comfort is bad. Like that's not bad. It's okay. But how often, how much, what are you going for? Like we have room. It doesn't need to be black and white.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the developmental process people have to go through is like not being all or nothing, good, bad. But I love that you talked about basically the way that I heard it is like, when is this just a habit that your brain has picked up? And the neural pathway is like, that's comfortable because it's like there's no resistance. And I love that you said this because this comes up when people are further along in the process, when they really understand what's going on. They're like, how do I know this just isn't a habit that I need to unlearn versus feeling like this is actually about safety and belonging? And just to kind of back up, I take a similar approach to you, but I think we might deviate a little bit, is that there's four main triggers that I've helped people identify. It's like tired, but it's not just about a nap. It's not like doing things that you like in your life. It's overriding your body's need for rest, right? Anxiousness, which is like when uncertainty is coming from the outside. So I'm sure you saw during COVID, right? Like weight went up, alcohol use went up. Like we in America, even though we're going through, the past several decades more transition, like we're a relatively stable country. Like, so it's like uncertainty can be hard. And then inadequacy, which is like, I'm not feeling enough, I'm feeling too much. And initially people think that's just about their weight, but it's like, oh, and, I'm feeling inadequate in other ways, which is like, oh my God, I messed up at work, or I feel like an imposter. I'm going to go get something to eat while I decide what to do. And then loneliness is where you just feel like really separate in whatever you're struggling with, not only food and weight, but other things. And so what I've mapped in my research is that there's different needs that each trigger needs satiated by. So I say to my clients, I'm like, so example, the tired trigger needs rest, but there's other ways to get rest than just taking a nap, right? There's walking, there's kind of what you were talking about, like, let's try some different things. But what I say to clients is like, okay, if you cannot make the change through logic alone, it's probably not like habitual, right? Like if you're getting a like a logic plan, right? Like, and transitions are such, I love that you brought that up, hard times for people because feeling our feelings is a luxury, right? Like the body's prioritizing like what's I can only do what's efficient, right? Like, and so to feel our feelings, we actually need a safe space for them to come up. So for a lot of people, I'm like, is it really about the transition or all those feelings that you kind of just push through during the day are now coming up? So, and it's like, oh, I love my clients are like, I mean, there's so much therapy, even trauma therapy. And it's like, then you ask me this, what tail trigger is it? I'm like, I had no idea so much was happening inside me. And I'm like, yeah, because we're kind of like, most of my clients feel like bobbleheads, right? Like I'm just kind of cut off from the neck down, but it's about identifying the needs. And so it's like, well, if during a transition, just like, not, altering your routine when you get home, having cheese and crackers in the house, not having it in the house, because different people feel differently. I don't know if you've found that, but like some people feel really unsafe, especially if they've experienced food insecurity as kids.
Or there's other people in your home who are, quote, allowed to have cheese and crackers. Like,
Yeah. So it brings up, there's so many like emotional complexities in each of this. But I'm like, if you try the thing that's kind of logical and it's not working, then this belonging radar, which is, I'm getting really geeky, but I feel like you like geeky. It's called an emotional immune system that is really trying to preserve our ideas of looking good. If that feels alarmed, no amount of logic is going to kind of help you change those food habits. So that's how I see the difference between the two, because it's a more primal emotional alarm that can only be satiated with needs rather than changing habits. Is that clear?
yeah, because the example I thought of is when I am very anxious about something. Like it's not logical. Like I know that. But if my husband, for example, I'm going to throw him under the bus, is like, well, you don't have to worry about that. I'm like, thanks. Like, I didn't.
Captain Obvious, you get the award.
I didn't need your logic. I know I'm not logical right now, but my brain is on fire. And I actually had a psychologist tell me that like the fire alarm is going off, like beep, beep, like that super, super annoying fire alarm is going off. And so my brain is like, uh-oh, like my house is on fire. Like I have the right to be stressed out right now. My house could be on fire. However, in some cases, like, oh, I just burned toast and like the smoke from the toast made my fire alarm go off and that's really annoying. So like not logical that I'm freaking out because there's toast in the toaster and like, oh, like, okay, no big deal, Tara, like, haha, move on. But I'm not logical when that alarm is going off. So that's what I was thinking of when you were talking. Sometimes you don't have the space to be like, oh, that's just toast. Like, no, there's beeping and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, well, and I love that you brought up that example because that's a great example. Our emotional immune system is made up of stories of things that really happened in the past that smoke in this case was associated with maybe bad things happening or hard things happening. I mean, I just went through I had cancer as a teenager and I got my first mammogram and they were like, we see something abnormal. We don't know if it's just your body. Let's do a diagnostic mammogram. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. And then they were like, the doctor's like, look, I don't think you have cancer, but with your history, I want you to do a breast biopsy. And I was like, what? And it was like, I knew all the logical stuff, right? Like, I know this is probably nothing. They're being they don't want to get sued. They also care, like all this stuff. But like, I could not sleep.
Of course not.
Yeah. And it was like, my body has actually been through some real things that this is, when I was 13, they told me 25% chance nothing, or 75% chance it was nothing. But that is like where we have to have compassion for ourselves. But people try to give us advice and it's just like, okay, I know that this is a different situation, but like, yeah. So we have to figure out how to resource ourselves there. That's the need with uncertainty is like, how do I resource myself so that I can tolerate all of this that is happening? But what we tend to do is restrict ourselves from the support we need, right? Like we don't just try to restrict food. It's like an overall strategy. So one other question kind of on the emotional stuff, because I've seen it reported that I mean, there's a lot of reasons that people don't stay on these drugs, right? Maybe it is cost, it could be, hard to access. But one of the things I found really kind of like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense is a lot of people struggling with anxiety and depression because the reasons they turn to food, which in my opinion are these safety belonging issues, haven't been resolved. Have you seen that in your clinic of people really a lot more anxiety, depression because they don't have food to cope anymore? Or is that not always true? I mean, it's never always true, but have you seen that?
I personally have not seen it, but I also like to talk about these medications like giving us the room to do what we've always needed to do. So, like if you've dieted, welcome to the club, right? Since you were 13, and we've like tried to do all like the quote right things of like, okay, I'm going to eat 3 meals a day and I'm going to limit ultra processed foods and I'm going to limit my added sugar, like all of the like reasonably healthy things, not in an overly restrictive manner. But like if you've ever tried to lose weight or if you've tried to improve your eating or your exercise, at some point in time, it's like this. It's exhausting. Like I'm hungry, I'm crabby, like this is not working, which is why people yo-yo and cycle. Can these drugs, and this is a question, right, that we would love them to be used in this way, like can these drugs, because they're taking a little bit of the hunger away, because they're helping you feel fuller longer, right, because they're allowing you to reach a healthier weight, because you should only be on them if you're at an unhealthy weight, right? Can these drugs be the opportunity, give us the opportunity to take the space to do the things that we were meant to do, right? And so from a food standpoint, I'm like, okay, let's not just take the drug and have it be your magic pill. Let's take the drug if it's appropriate and like be on the best diet possible because you're not bothered by food noise anymore because you're not craving these foods anymore. Like let's have a fabulous diet and we're taking the medication because it's helping you improve your health. So when you mentioned that, I was thinking like, okay, if we're not struggling with the food noise and the craving, can this be the time where we really figure out like, hey, it actually wasn't, or I was turning to food, but it's not food that was giving me what I needed. So like letting us have like a little bit more of a gap between like, this is what I was struggling with and food was my answer, but now I'm recognizing that it doesn't have to be. So I'm spinning that positively and I didn't mean to do that, but that's where I went.
I mean, I think that's why I see more people coming to my programs on these because it's especially the emotional component.
Yeah, like they have the space.
Yeah, they have the space. And it's like, and again, I know that you wouldn't maybe not say this, but they don't want to be on them forever, the drugs forever.
It's a scary concept. Like you're going to be on this medication for the rest of your life. Like whether or not that's true, like that's I think is overwhelming to hear in any kind of medication.
I know, especially if the cost. Yeah, I mean, you deal with insurance a lot. I don't know what the deal is with insurance and stuff, but yeah, I see so many more people, and I'm like, this is great. Like you now have I love that you said the space. I think of the stability to like really focus on like what were these reasons that maybe when my blood sugar was deregulated and all these other, I just couldn't do. So, okay, one more question is, what have you seen be the most successful with your patients with the psychological aspect of food? Is it those experiments? Is there something that sort of universal themes that people could start to be thinking about with themselves?
There's a few. I think the biggest conversations that I have and like why there's a box of Kleenex in my office that gets like heavily used is the conversation around like you don't have to lose weight. You don't have to do anything that you're not ready to do. We don't have to address food until we address sleep. Like that the assumption is that changes to food and or changes to weight is the answer and it's always going to be the answer and it's always this like emergent like I'm bombarded all day every day about being quote skinnier and I hate that word but it's all over my Instagram of course. And I'll sometimes ask my patients like do you want to do this? Like do you have this capacity to do this? Do you have the time to focus on this? do you want to work on your stress first? Do you want to work on your sleep first? And I'm not always sure that whoever it is, like the internet or their medical provider, like has given them that option, because we do, like, we can be honest and know that there are health consequences to excess weight. Like, I'm not going to pretend like there are not potential consequences. There are also consequences to having normal weight obesity or having poor metabolic health, even if you're a normal weight. So again, like, weight does not equal health. Like, low weight does not equal good health, and high weight does not equal bad health. We can be on all sorts of the spectrum, and we can get into that if we want. But I have seen more than I care to count, like, relief on my patients' faces when I've said, like, you don't have to do this. Like, I know that you got sent to the dietitian, or that you were told that maybe you should go on a medication, or that you were encouraged to have bariatric surgery, but like, you don't have to. Like, you didn't do it yesterday, or you did it 1,000 times before that didn't work. Like, do you want to just work on getting more sleep? Like, do you want to work on finding a therapist that you actually like? It doesn't have to be this like urgent need. It doesn't have to be a need at all this year, or this Monday, or this January. But it's everywhere. And I feel like we can't get away from it. And that's our next episode on obesity bias, because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I'm quite passionate about that. So maybe we'll talk again.
Yeah, no, that's so beautiful because my graduate work is in like how adults change. And when you take our autonomy away, we almost rebel against the other side, right? It's like, so for you to give them agency, right? Like you're giving them choice. Like all of this stuff is going to have to be addressed. Like, and then you're starting them on the developmental process of like, let's listen to your life and your body and where you are. What feels like the next step for you, right? And I think I don't think most people get that in a practitioner. So I can see why you're so respected and popular. I feel like I'm saying you're like a high school popular girl, but you know what I mean? Like, I just think that's so important. And again, I think this kind of circles back to earlier in our conversation of like, I know in coaching, I know in therapy, it's like 50% of the effectiveness is just if you feel like you have a good connection with the person. And I think you're setting people up for success when you approach it that way, which don't you think is the exception that you do it that way?
And I know fabulous, fabulous people who practice the same as me, and I was taught by the best. But I was going to say, like, I have some crazy goals that I've written down with patients. Like, ideally patients leave my room. We practice medical nutrition therapy. So, you're coming to see me for this condition, and nutrition is an aspect of that. And so I hope to help be a part of your treatment plan in terms of your doctor and whoever else you need to see. But I've had patients leave my office, be like, Allie's going to go to bed at 10 o'clock. 5 days a week. And they're like, who are you? I thought you were the dietitian. But our whole concept, our whole conversation was about how you don't get enough sleep and how that can impact your eating habits and that can impact your weight. Or like, Allie is going to find a new therapist because she hates the one that she has. And I really think you need cognitive therapy or psychotherapy. Or I don't know. I wrote down once, like, I'm going to drink 6 Cokes per day. Never in my education did anyone say, like, hey, Tara, you should prescribe 6 Cokes a day for people. I prescribed 6 Cokes a day for that person because they were drinking 12 and they agreed to 6 for me. And then the next time I saw them, we worked towards 2, right? Like, or the mini cans or X number of beers. I had someone who wrote down, like, I'm only going to buy beer in 6 packs the next time that I go to the liquor store, because that was their trigger from coming home from their very, very stressful job. If they bought 20 beers, they drank 20 beers. But if they just bought a 6-pack, they only drank 6. So I had very non-nutrition goals millions of times in the clinic, because I heard from my patients that those things were more important than, like, please eat 80 grams of protein and 1,400 calories. And some people got that, and that's what they wanted and needed, and I gave that to them. But a lot of times I was like, I'm not sure that food or calories is what we're talking about here, or what we need to talk about.
A lot of what I work on with the root of people is that all or nothing. They don't have the flexibility of their mindset. And it's like you are helping them realize that, like, you can meet yourself where you are and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And having that experience that it, quote, works, right? And that like, there's something about like, I got here slowly. I'm not going to lose it overnight either. That allows people to rest in the results and actually do better versus the all or nothing perfectionism, instant success or no success, like success failure binary that a lot of people, are operating under. And again, complete compassion. I struggled with my weight for 18 years, all of this stuff. I've been there. I get it. And it's so scary to go slow and steady, even though it's easier.
Well, and we're marketed that, right? Like, I hate like bouncing back after baby. Like, well, I grew this baby for 9 months, so your bounce back program better be at least 9 months. But now I've got an infant, so I hope you give me some grace and give me more time. Or like wedding things. Like the people who are coming to your wedding know exactly what you look like because they're important people in your life. Like, do you need to look different for your wedding? And again, I get it. Like, we all have desires and needs and wants, and all of those things are okay. Like, I wanted to look good on my wedding day. But we have these like messages that like, you need to be different. And they're like, I'm not sure that that's true.
You nailed it. And right. And it's like, there's already so much shame around food and weight. And then if we're coming through that lens, we hear you're different and we hear you're wrong rather than, hey, you're right. Where you are makes sense. And let's just start from there and we can go from there. And then to me, it's like I've found with my clients, because I go slow and steady. I mean, I don't tell them what to do, but the process is slow and steady. It's like, okay, if you're drinking, I mean, a lot of my clients are sober, but if we take if we go from the like 12, well, now I'm switching to Coke, 12 Cokes to 6 Cokes, there's going to be some withdrawal. I imagine there's might going to be, if they're drinking caffeinated, Coke has caffeine in it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like, you're going to have a headache.
You're going to have a headache. It's like, okay. But then pretty soon, I mean, I cycle in and out of coffee. Oh, that's been a long time since I've been off it. But I was like, oh, I thought I was tired because I wasn't drinking coffee. But it was like, I learned, oh no, coffee makes you tired because of the withdrawal of caffeine. Like, you're not really tired. And it was like, oh, so like you learn these things on the way that are like, make it easier to keep with the changes. Or I don't know. I always use the metaphor of clients with like, if you're eating a lot of ultra processed foods, you're not taking care of yourself, like internally, it kind of feels like a polluted lake, right? Like dark, dirty water. But like when you see the Mediterranean, you're like, oh my God, it's gorgeous and blue, right? So as you start to like untox, if we're going to use like, I mean, I know our body detoxes, but as you start to remove that load, next time you go to drink 7 Cokes or, you're going to be like, oh my God, I feel this so much more than when I felt it, because now my water's clear and I see the sludge now.
You jumped into a dirty lake. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it becomes, again, to circle back to adults need to have autonomy and they need to feel like this is their choice. It becomes, I want to do that, not that Tara or Allie told me to do that. But that's where, again, this integrative thinking of where I want people prescribing GLP-1s to understand metabolic health. I want more healthcare providers to understand how adults actually change. But that's part of the new world we have to build, right, Tara? So thank you. So, one more question. I know this is kind of like it feels like a little not so as integrated as the rest of our conversation, but someone was interested in access. And they said like med spas and all these things. And I know that you obviously said like, go to your provider, but I've also heard from people that like some people are selling these GLP-1s like a multi-level marketing part of, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. But med spas, like, what is your opinion on those?
I would like you to get a medication, no matter what it's for, from someone who specializes in that.
End of story.
Not from your podiatrist, please.
So Tara, thank you so much for your time here. Is there anything else you wanted to add that I haven't asked, or that you think people should know when they're taking this more holistic look at GLP-1s?
I want to remind them that it's okay, that it is a tool, but also to use the tool with every other tool in their toolbox. I just said tool 100 times. But use what you need to use for stress management. Use strength training to decrease your loss of lean mass. Get enough protein, get enough hydration, get enough nutrients. And again, like, use the GLP-1 as the opportunity to practice what you haven't been able to practice before.
I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Where can people find more about you?
So I write for Mayo Clinic Press, which is more of a consumer-facing website for Mayo Clinic. I am the lead dietitian for the Mayo Clinic Diet. And my favorite part of my job is Mayo Clinic on Nutrition, which is a podcast that I'll have you on, Allie. We can talk all about, I love what you are doing with the psychology and the belonging and the needs coming up. Future episode, everyone.
Well, thank you. And we will link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time, expertise, and compassion, Tara.
It was really great to spend time with you, Allie. Thank you for having me on.
That's all for this special episode. But if you've got a question or topic suggestion, you can leave us a voicemail at 507-538-6272. We might even feature your voice on the show. For more On Nutrition episodes and resources, check us out online at mayoclinic.org/onnutrition. And if you found the show helpful, please subscribe and make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. It really helps others find our show. Thanks for listening, and until next time, eat well and be well.